Let's just jump right into the Dark Transgressive Mythos. Picture this, a scene straight out of a gritty neo-noir nightmare. You're standing in this rundown hotel room, and it's exactly 3:47 a.m. The air is thick, smelling like a mix of jasmine incense and just ancient rotting walls. We've got our protagonist, a disgraced former detective named August Crane, who's just been called out to a crime scene by his estranged ex-partner, Detective Marlo Chen. But, as we quickly find out, what they're looking at in the bathtub of room 1408 isn't just your standard murder case. It's an absolute physiological and architectural impossibility, something that literally threatens to rewrite the very fabric of human existence. So, the victim in the bathtub left this incredibly eerie message. It's written right there on the bathroom mirror in carmine dye. You know, the super vibrant red stuff they used in medieval illuminated manuscripts? It says, "The tongue remembers what the mouth forgets." And man, this perfectly sets up the central mystery of the whole story. Because here's the kicker. This text isn't just written on the surface of the mirror. It completely refuses to be scrubbed off. If you try to wipe it away, it just reappears, as if it's being written from the inside of the glass looking out. It's such a brilliant narrative device, right? It's like this message is desperately trying to communicate something that reality itself is trying to ignore. I really want you to stop and ask yourself this chilling question for a second. Put yourself right in Detective Crane's shoes and plunge into this impossible reality he's facing. Because the woman in room 1408 doesn't just have a ruined face or a disfigured face. She doesn't have a face at all. Think about the terrifyingly bizarre condition of not just this victim, but an escalating series of them. I mean, not exactly a 5-star review for the Meridian Hotel, right? The skin from her hairline all the way down to her chin is perfectly smooth, unbroken, almost like a porcelain egg. There are no eyes, absolutely no mouth, and when they do the autopsy, there isn't even a skull cavity for teeth. Oh, and her lungs? Completely packed with this ancient, untraceable sea salt. But honestly, the most terrifying part of all this is what happens when the police try to ID these women using DNA or fingerprints. The public records retroactively change. Their own families just forget them. It's like reality is literally editing these women out of existence and replacing them with this smooth, terrifying absence. Let's move along and see how this builds, because Crane and Chen are pretty sharp, and they quickly realize these hotel room numbers and discovery dates are definitely not random. You've got room 308 found on March 8th, room 1808 on October 8th, room 2208 on December 8th. The pattern is escalating, both mathematically and chronologically. These aren't just random coordinates on a city map. And that brings us to a massive, reality-shattering twist. These gruesome scenes, they aren't isolated murders at all. They are literally chapters and verses being written into reality to form this dark, living gospel. Every single body is a verse, every hotel room acts as a page, and every so-called murder is a word. There is some kind of entity out there turning the entire city into its own scripture, literally writing itself into our reality in real time. Okay, let's dive into who or what this entity actually is. Enter the Smooth Mother. Crane goes to his liminal cult expert, a guy named Silas, who consults some seriously apocryphal texts. According to the lore, she's this ancient, pre-literate goddess. Her core belief is that the exact moment humans learned to speak, they learned how to lie. And I mean, think about it. How often do we use our words to hide what we're actually feeling? To her, spoken language is just a gross corruption of absolute truth. So what does she do? She collects the tongues of liars. But here's the wild part. She doesn't see it as punishment. To her, it's an act of pure preservation. She keeps all these tongues in jars down in an underground temple where they just telepathically whisper all the secrets they could never articulate when they were alive. This reveals just a terrifying philosophical conflict. The Smooth Mother views basic human identity, your name, your face, the role you play in society, as a prison. It's a performance. It's just a lie we tell ourselves to maintain some illusion of order. In stark contrast, this concept of smoothness represents absolute transparency and total liberation. She honestly believes she isn't murdering these women, she's freeing them. The victims are actually willing converts. They realize that their identity is a burden, and they voluntarily surrender their faces to become pure, uncorrupted testimony. So you see, our detectives aren't running a traditional homicide investigation here, not even close. They are dealing with a literal viral contagion of understanding. If you read the Smooth Mother's gospel, you're inviting her right into your head. If you start to wrap your mind around her impossible paradoxical grammar, well, you become fluent. And fluency systematically erases your face. The scary thing is, The more August and Marlowe actually understand the crime they're investigating, the more their own faces begin to involuntarily blur and smooth out. To put that into perspective, the recovered verses really show how aggressively this thing is spreading. The text is just sweeping across the city like wildfire as more and more of these converts voluntarily erase themselves to join the gospel. We've got verse 1808 over at the Gramercy, verse 2208 at the Celestial, building all the way up to verse 2608 at the Orpheum Hotel. At the Orpheum, a victim actually dials 911 while her face is literally unmaking itself, just to make absolutely sure her testimony is officially documented in the text. It's chilling. With escalation getting totally out of hand, our detectives, now teamed up with this desperate linguist named Dr. Vasquez, are forced to track the contagion right to its source. They end up in room 3008 of the Belmont Hotel, and this is where reality completely breaks down. The hotel room basically transforms into this spiraling, reality-bending stone staircase that plunges miles beneath the foundation of the city. We are completely leaving the gritty noir thriller behind now and dropping straight into full-blown cosmic horror. They've discovered the Archive of Unspeaking. Once they reach the bottom, they walk into this vast, subterranean cathedral just lined with thousands upon thousands of jars. And yep, each one contains a preserved human tongue. Dr. Vasquez actually finds the jar holding the tongue of her own sister Carmen, who fell victim to the gospel back in 1987. When she touches the glass, Carmen's preserved tongue consciously speaks directly into her mind. It transmits this exact, haunting thought without making a single sound. I see now what language was hiding. The tongues are still alive down there. They are testifying forever. And right on cue, the smooth mother herself manifests at this massive altar made of compressed salt, and she lays out the ultimate trap. She tells them the gospel is almost complete. There are literally only 3 verses left to write. Once those are done, the temple is going to rise to the surface and globally rewrite all of humanity into a telepathic, faceless hive mind of absolute truth. And guess what? The smooth mother needs August, Marlowe, and Dr. Vasquez to write those final 3 verses. She gives them this impossible 48-hour ultimatum. Door number 1, willing surrender. They can just let go of their identities, painlessly add their internal unspoken truths to the pure gospel, and become whole. Or door number 2, futile resistance. They can stubbornly try to hold on to their flawed human identities and have their testimony violently extracted anyway while their faces are forcibly erased. Regardless of what they choose, the gospel is going to be completed. No way out. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer scale of the outbreak happening above ground. While they were trapped down in that temple, the contagion went completely airborne. When they finally get back to the surface and walk into the local police precinct, there are exactly 43 officers, including August's old partner, just sitting in the holding cells. They are completely smooth-faced, sitting in perfect lotus positions, and humming in this eerie telepathic harmony. They are literally broadcasting their darkest, most authentic truths directly into everyone's minds. It's a full-on apocalyptic escalation at this point. As that underground temple begins its ascent, reality itself starts to smooth out. The architecture of the buildings just loses all its details, turning into perfectly blank, featureless geometry. Ancient script starts overlapping modern street signs and billboards, and the civilians, they're just wandering the streets, frantically holding their hands over their own faces, desperately trying to stop their features from physically sliding off as the viral fluency takes over. Back at the apartment of Silas, the occult expert, things reach a breaking point. The original manuscript of the gospel opens up on the table, all by itself. The final chapters start writing themselves, but in August Crane's own handwriting, it's violently pulling his darkest hidden truths right out of his head. The book writes, "I never believed in truth, only in the relief of pattern." And as it writes, Crane's face begins to involuntarily smooth away. His identity is being forcibly extracted into the scripture. So time is basically up. The final verses are writing themselves. But here is the crucial turning point. August, Marlowe, and Dr. Vasquez realize something huge. They can't stop the translation. They can't just unlearn the language of the goddess. But they can deliberately mistranslate it. They can actively sabotage her gospel. Think about it. The smooth mother's entire structure relies on absolute, uncorrupted, perfectly transparent truth. So what happens if you feed that system a paradox? August grabs a pen and just aggressively scribbles over his magically appearing testimony. He starts introducing completely unanswerable questions. He writes, but what if truth isn't something to be believed in? What if chaos is the only honest state? He literally weaponizes his own doubt. It acts like a computer virus, crashing the smooth mother's absolute certainty.
Then, Marlo Chen steps right up. The gospel is trying to force her to confess her deep-seated desire for absolute control. Instead, she boldly defies it, writing her own addition right into the verse. What if justice is just a story we tell ourselves to cope with randomness? Boom. She actively introduces chaos into a divine narrative that demands perfect, unyielding judgment.
Finally, Dr. Vasquez takes the pen. Now, her entire life was spent trying to understand the impossible, right? She completely corrupts her own final chapter by writing, "What if understanding is the problem, not the solution?" Together, their chorus of doubt acts like a giant wrench thrown straight into the gears of a cosmic machine. And this, right here, is the brilliant core of this entire dark mythos. The corrupted testimony introduces radical uncertainty into a structure that absolutely demands pure truth. By ending the goddess's gospel not with periods, but with unanswerable question marks, they completely break her spell. It shows us that, yeah, human identity might be incredibly messy, deeply flawed, and largely just a performance we put on. But that very messiness, that uniquely human capacity for doubt, is actually our ultimate defense against a terrifying absolute transparency. The story ends abruptly right there, leaving us completely hanging, wondering if they actually saved the city or just hit pause on the apocalypse. So as we wrap up this explainer, I've got one final question for you, pulled directly from the author's chilling sign-off. After learning the grammar of the smooth mother, after following the room numbers with us, after really understanding the gospel, does your face feel slightly loose? Because if it does, well, that means you're fluent now. Welcome to the gospel. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. I'll catch you next time.